The Roman Empire, an unstoppable force, known for its military might, vast territories, and legendary generals. But behind its rise wasn't just strategy and courage, it was built on a secret: money. The empire's strength wasn't merely forged on the battlefield, but on the hidden financial system that powered its growth and expansion. What if I told you the true foundation of Rome's power lies in a financial cycle that eventually led to its collapse? Rome's empire wasn't just built on courage, it was built on debt. The Roman war machine, often portrayed as unstoppable and fueled by honor and discipline, was actually sustained by an intricate and complex financial system. The empire's expansion wasn't merely about military conquest, it was driven by economic necessity. To fuel endless wars, conquer vast territories, and maintain order, Rome had to master the art of finance, and that hidden system eventually became its downfall. The costs of empire were staggering. The Roman legions needed not just soldiers, but food, weapons, roads, and pay. Horses required constant feed, and siege weapons needed timber, iron, and labor to function. Everything required money. Wages for soldiers, resources for construction, and supplies for campaigns all demanded financial resources. Each new war brought with it a new set of costs, making Rome's military machine an ever-expanding entity that required increasingly sophisticated methods of funding. In the early Republic, Rome's military was a citizen army. Soldiers were landowners who provided their own weapons and fought to defend their homeland. But as Rome expanded and wars became more distant and prolonged, the system of citizen soldiers began to break down. The need for professional, full-time soldiers grew. Rome's military structure evolved to become more centralized, with the state beginning to pay stipends to its soldiers. These payments weren't huge, but they ensured the loyalty of Rome's military, creating a system where soldiers relied on the state for their livelihood. With this shift in military structure came the introduction of conquest as a revenue model. As Rome continued its territorial expansion, each new province meant new sources of wealth: taxes, slaves, gold mines, and tribute. This created a self-reinforcing cycle. War funded more war. The wealth from conquered lands provided the resources necessary to finance further expansion, creating an economic loop that seemed sustainable for centuries. But this reliance on external wealth and territorial conquest wasn't enough. To finance prolonged wars like the Punic Wars against Carthage, Rome began to borrow. The equities, Rome's emerging financial elite, provided the necessary capital in exchange for returns. These loans were not altruistic gestures, they were investments. The wealthy expected to see returns, whether in the form of interest payments, tax farming rights, or business monopolies in newly conquered regions. The result was the creation of a militarized economy, one where war wasn't just a means to protect the empire, but a profitable business venture in itself. The more wars were fought, the more wealth was generated for the ruling elite. Over time, this militarized economy shifted political power. Generals gained increasing influence, promising soldiers and the Senate spoils of war. Senators, once purely politicians, became shareholders in violence, invested in military campaigns not for the good of Rome, but for personal profit. Private contractors, known as publicani, managed everything from logistics to tax collection, taking huge profits off the top. The entire economic system was increasingly dependent on continuous expansion and war. But there was a price for this seemingly endless wealth: debasing the currency. As Rome's wars continued, the need for more money became more urgent. To pay soldiers and service the growing national debt, the empire began to dilute its currency. Starting under Emperor Nero, the silver content in the denarius, Rome's main coin, was reduced. This debasement continued for centuries, turning what was once a reliable coin into a hollow promise backed by little more than trust in the system. As the silver content of the coin diminished, inflation took hold, and confidence in the currency eroded. By the 3rd century, Rome's monetary system was in freefall. Meanwhile, the wealth inequality in Rome grew to unprecedented levels. The rich shielded their wealth through land, slaves, and offshore accounts, while the poor were left to face higher taxes, inflation, and conscription into the army. As the empire's resources dwindled, public services collapsed, and corruption soared. The poor bore the brunt of the financial burden as the elite continued to protect their wealth, often at the expense of the lower classes. And here's where the story gets even more interesting. The same financial practices that built Rome's empire, borrowing, debt, currency debasement, are still in play today. Modern governments borrow heavily to fund wars, crises, and economic growth. Central banks print money to cover the shortfall. And once again, the elite benefit, while the general population faces the consequences. Inflation, reduced services, and an unstable financial system. The parallels are undeniable. Just as in Rome, modern financial systems are driven by debt, and the cycle of borrowing and spending continues unabated. Ultimately, the Roman Empire collapsed not because of military defeats, but because of a financial collapse. As the empire expanded, it eventually hit a wall. Resources ran out, enemies grew stronger, and the state began to squeeze its people harder through higher taxes and more stringent controls. The empire resorted to bread and circuses, a strategy to placate the masses with entertainment and free food, while the elite fortified their wealth. The people were distracted, but the financial system crumbled. The lesson here is clear. An economy built on perpetual expansion, especially violent expansion, eventually collapses. Whether it's a military empire like Rome or a modern financial system, the rules are the same. Once the revenue dries up, the state begins squeezing its own people to maintain the system. The cycle continues until the math no longer works, and no one dares to fix it. Today, modern governments fund wars and crises by borrowing. Central banks print money, which inflates the value of the currency. The rich benefit from this system, buying up assets and profiting from defense contracts, while the poor face higher inflation, stagnant wages, and a dwindling standard of living. The financial system is built on the same principles that helped bring about the fall of Rome: debt, inflation, and the continuous expansion of resources. This is where financial education becomes crucial. It's not just about understanding personal finance, it's about understanding financial systems, the invisible forces that shape economies. By recognizing systemic stress, we can begin to see the signs of when things are about to break down. The truth is simple. Understanding the system is the first step toward resilience. It's about recognizing the patterns that drive economies, not just blindly accepting the narrative we're given. So, the next time you hear about a new conflict, a new economic stimulus, or a new financial crisis, don't just watch. Follow the money. Understand who profits and who ultimately pays. Because the mechanisms are eerily familiar, and history has shown us time and time again that systems built on debt and expansion eventually collapse. If you found this perspective valuable, subscribe to our channel to continue exploring the hidden systems that shape our world. History has the answers, and we're just beginning to uncover them.